Thank you. I'm rusty. It's been weeks and weeks since we've met. Oh, much better. It's that echo, powerful echo. So this is the Acton Select Board. If you're waiting for something else, that's not it. This is the Acton Select Board. We start our meetings at 7, and it's past 7, at least according to the clock that's got a battery in it. The other clock is run by power, so it's not correct. We need a quorum in order to start a meeting, and all 5 of the select board members are here. So let's call this meeting to order and get started. The first order of business in a select board meeting, as usual, is resident concerns, because it's really important for us to hear from people. Sometimes we hear by email, and that's helpful. Sometimes we get phone calls, that's fine too. Sometimes people come here and speak directly. Because we have other things on the agenda to get to, well, we'll be limiting comments to 3 minutes total, or less is fine. What we find is that if people have a comment that's that long, it's probably going to have too much detail for us to understand it well, and that sending it to us by email is even better. But we still want to hear from you in any case. So let's start in the room. Anybody in the room want to have a resident concern? No? Matt, what about online?
We have one hand raised, Mr. Chair.
Great, let's hear from them.
Perfect. This is a call-in user. If they can let us know who they are, they should be able to speak now.
Hi, this is Tara from up here in Minnesota. How are you guys? Can you hear me?
We got you.
Great. So I have an urgent item note on something I was writing for an update for a local community group. And it was about the improvements to the planning board and actually doing planning and stuff like that, you know, what's required by state law, et cetera. And I haven't really, you had been kind of on top of that, and I wanted to just ask you if there was any states regard to more holistic planning. That's all. Thanks.
Great, thanks. I should have an update about that the next few weeks, so we'll stay tuned. Any other resident concerns, Matt?
Not online, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great, thanks. The next agenda item, number 2, is chair update, town manager update, and members minute. So that starts with me. Got a few things to talk about. So that storm, the microburst that ran through Acton and some surrounding towns, really put everything into perspective. It really upended a number of people's lives. I guess I had a couple of comments about that. One was, it was really heartening to see both on social media and by email, so much neighbor-to-neighbor outreach. People were checking in on each other, you know, who has power, who needs what. You know, if you don't have power, come over to my house, you know, you can plug in your phones. And that was really, really heartening, just to remember how much support we can give each other in the town. And I hope to see that. I love seeing that when it happens. The other thing I noticed was the amazing across-the-board response from the town. Town manager is going to get into more of the details of that because he's been in touch with all the departments. But I will say that one part about that was we had an employee development day on Friday where, you know, over 100 of the town's 250 or so employees were there at Nara Park, you know, getting to know each other, learning things, having fun, connecting. It was a great event. And you could see how much, you know, pride the employees have in the town and in the work they do. Luckily, that event ended minutes before the deluge, so people were able to be, you know, redirected, and the response started immediately. Some other events in the last few days that I thought I'd mention. The Commission on Disabilities used to have an annual picnic to invite people with disabilities to meet each other and to meet the Commission on Disabilities. And this year they were able to start that up again, which was great to see. That was on Sunday. And another piece of that I wanted to note was that when the commission reached out to the town about providing transportation, the town was able to respond and provide a van service for a few people who otherwise wouldn't have been able to get to the picnic. And I just wanted to thank the town manager and his staff for being able to do that. I know that's not always possible for events that happen on weekends or evenings, but I really appreciated that you were able to make that happen. Another event over the weekend on Saturday was the East Acton Village Green rededication. So this started as a grant back in 2003. Got put on hold because of the coming of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, because it's right next to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail over there where Concord Road meets Great Road. And it was just so great to see it all come together. It was a wonderful event. We got to meet Strong Bear Medicine of the Neshoba Praying Indians, who's recently moved back to Littleton in sort of the historical homestead of the of those Neshoba Praying Indians. And we also got to honor three great, I call them environmental foremothers in my short remarks, although that makes them sound like they were back from the 18th century. This is Mary Michaelman and Carol Holly and Mickey Williams, who were around here and active in the 90s. And left us way too soon, but did inspire a lot of environmental work. And finally, this morning, at just a few minutes before 10 a.m., we had our annual 9/11 commemoration at the public safety facility. It's a short but very moving event. With the playing of taps and the ringing of the fire bells to indicate the loss of a firefighter, and various prayers and short remarks, and just a wonderful chance for the community to come together and honor not only all those who lost their lives on that day, but in particular the two Acton residents who lost their lives that day. Amy Sweeney and Phil Rosenzweig. I think that's all I have. Sorry I had to go on for so long, but it's a busy weekend. John?
Thank you. I have just some project updates that I wanted to mention. I missed the last meeting, so I didn't get to share some of the things that are happening. We started the removal of the hazardous dam that's on River Street. If you've been by there, you'll see that the dam itself has been taken down, and now the project is just to clean up the site and restore it to a natural habitat, which will continue through the fall. The renovation of the Gardner Field is almost completed. The playground equipment is in, it's being used. The parking lot is in and it's being used. And we have some additional site work and landscaping and other work to do on the front of the property and a few other places, but I think the response so far has been tremendous. We have new tennis courts on Elm Street, and they have been lined for pickleball for those that enjoy that sport. I wanted to mention the online permitting that we launched on August 10th. It exceeded our expectations for how much it would make everyone's lives easier, both the contractors, the residents, and our staff. And so I'm really excited that our team pulled together, the land use team, IT, and everyone else to get that launched. And we started with building, and we're gonna have other departments online in October. So very exciting advancement in how we provide services to the community. I also wanted to mention a new taxi service pilot program. It was mentioned earlier that we're trying to provide more options for transportation. It was a select board goal this year. And we launched a program called Acton Rides, which is essentially a taxi service, but it's only to be used to supplement our existing transportation programs. And it's for people that are eligible based on financial need or other criteria. But if there's people that are interested in that, email us at transportation@actonma.gov, and you can find out how to sign up. I also want to mention a collaboration between Wanjiko, our diverse DEI director, and the police department that was pretty successful at the end of August. I think it was the day before school started. They went up Great Road to many of the residential areas there with an ice cream truck, and they stopped in several places and interacted with residents and gave out ice cream. It was a great chance to connect with people and also a nice way to kind of close out the summer. So we were excited that that was a success. They gave out 300 ice cream cones that afternoon, which was pretty good. I also wanted to mention that our PD is starting a body camera program. This is an important step for transparency and accountability, and also to protect our staff. Body cameras have been proven to help everyone. So if you see them out there with the camera on, we're trying them out to make sure we pick the right ones, and we'll hopefully launch the full program later this year. I also wanted to mention the bike share program that you may have heard about. You can pick up a bike at East Acton Village Green or behind Donlands. And it's very easy to use the app, and you can use the bike and have a nice time. And I just wanted to follow up on the chair's comments on the storm. I tend to be brief, but this is a little longer, and I apologize in advance. But I just wanted to try to cover, it's been a pretty interesting last few days. So on Friday, we hear it was a microburst. It was an intense lightning storm that toppled trees and telephone poles all over town. We had 6,000 people without electricity at the peak of it on Friday. We had roads closed, major roads, minor roads, school buses that were trying to bring kids home actually had to go back to the school because there were so many places they couldn't go. We had trees falling on houses, trees falling on cars, some with people in the cars. Thankfully, we had no injuries reported during the storm. So it was quite a scene, and the community was just I've never seen worse destruction from trees in my career, which is I think 20 years or so. So it was a lot. So as Jim mentioned, we had employees that were heading home that day. Many of them turned around and came back and helped the community respond. Our public safety departments staffed up, our DPW crews mobilized. We activated the EOC to start the communications amongst the departments and with the utility. It was really a team effort. Public safety dispatchers were outstanding. We get on average 100 calls per week for the dispatch center. That Friday, starting at around 2:30, they handled 300 calls in one shift. And so it was amazing. They actually had 5 dispatchers working at one point to try to handle the volume. So they did a great job, and they helped us, throughout the storm, coordinating efforts of cleanup and where everybody was. The firefighters were out all over the place during the storm, and then afterwards to try to help people that have incidents throughout town. Police were doing the same thing, responding to calls, and then helping with roads and keeping people safe and helping with detours. Our building department worked all weekend. They have to go around and make sure that people, if their house was impacted, that it was safe. Unfortunately, we had to have a few people that weren't able to stay in their houses due to damage from the storm. Our electrical inspector and plumbing inspector were out all weekend too. Our social services team helped connect people that were impacted by that, find places to go and connect them with resources. And our DPW, they really are part of the first response. Throughout the storm, they weren't just cleaning up and trying to address trees. When there was a call that the police or fire had, or the ambulance had, they called DPW and said, hey, we have a call at so-and-so, can you help us get there? Because they have to move trees out of the way and everything else. And so they did that all weekend up until Sunday afternoon, when they shifted to trying to manage a major flood that occurred from a rainstorm that came out of nowhere. So they were very busy, and they continue to be very busy, and I'm proud of the work that they did and that everybody did. Our operations team and our IT folks had to help all those departments operate because our Wi-Fi was down, our internet was down, and so they were helping troubleshooting for everybody, in addition to help troubleshooting building issues that we had, like we had an issue in this building, we had a few other issues that they helped address up until about 20 minutes ago, where they helped fix the internet for the cable broadcast tonight. So it was a team effort. I'm really proud of the way that we do things here. Our departments are very professional, and they take their job seriously, and as you mentioned earlier, they're very proud to do it. We didn't have to drag people back. They were happy to do it, and they did what they could to help this community, and we went from 6,000 people without power down to 0 in a weekend. So I'm glad that it's over, and hopefully that's our storm for the year, and we'll continue to. So just wanted to thank everyone. I will actually thank individuals at a later time, but I just wanted to thank holistically everyone involved, and it's all the departments. Just a few programming notes related to the storm. Debris pickup, we did actually open the transfer station for special hours on Sunday and Monday when it's usually closed to allow people to bring storm debris. We'll continue that through this week and look for another announcement later this week for anything else related to storm debris. We will not be doing a curbside collection program. That's not something that we do. So we have been seeing residents, as they clean up their yards, they've been bringing trees out to the front. That's fine. That's maybe more convenient for you to bring it wherever you're bringing it or your contractor. I would ask that if you do that, first of all, be very careful. It's dangerous to do that type of work, so make sure that you know what you're doing, or hire someone that does. And that I'd ask that you not obstruct the sidewalks or the roadways. So thank you to all the residents rather, and for your cooperation. And also I've heard from a lot of residents that wanted me to extend thanks to the departments that worked so hard over the weekend. So I'm going to continue finding ways to do that. But thank you.
Thanks, John. There might be members who have things to say as well. Bean?
Thank you. Yeah, I've had some experience in the past with storm damage, and I was trying to compare what happened here over the weekend with other storms that have hit Acton in the past in my experience. So I think, the level of damage that we're seeing here certainly compares with some major hurricanes we had hit the town, Hurricane Bob and Hurricane Gloria back in the 80s and 90s. It's also sort of comparable to the, more recently, that Halloween snowstorm we had a few years ago. That I think that one of the differences that I see is that over the years, all branches of government have staffed up. We've got more depth, more first responders, more police, fire, DPW, although it still doesn't have as much staffing as it should. The staff we've got do a really good job. The town, over the years, the capital equipment budget, have purchased some really great equipment to allow us to deal with those kind of storms, whether it's front-end loaders or recent acquisition of the aerial lift truck for the tree department, the big brush chipper that we've got down there. So certainly the response was a lot quicker and a lot more coherent and much better organized than some of the storms that we sat through back in the 80s and 90s. The other kind of good thing about it is that it was a fairly limited area that was impacted. So the utility companies were able to shift resources in here, which is with some of the larger hurricanes, there's just 300 towns that are in trouble as opposed to a dozen. But my congratulations to John and all of the town employees for doing a really great job. The other point I'd like to raise is that for the Acton 250, our first speaker program is going to be on Thursday, September 21st at 7 p.m. in this room. Professor Robert Allison, noted author, is going to be speaking about some of the events in the 1770s leading up to the Battle of the North Bridge, kind of set the stage for what happened then. It's the first of what's going to be a multi-year program of events, and we're hoping to get some great response. It will be in this room. We are going to be, we can't live stream it due to some scheduling conflicts with ActonTV, but we will be making a copy of it, and it will be streamed on ActonTV in the future, and there's also going to be a Zoom link, so keep your eyes peeled for that. That's it. Thank you.
I really don't have a lot to say, but just to thank the DPW in Acton and the police and fire. I mean, it was such a, I don't know, microburst, and happened so quickly and so much destruction that I don't know, I have to give John kudos as well for being a great leader and managing all of that.
Nothing from me, thanks.
Thank you. I just have a couple of updates from some of my liaison assignments. First, for the first time, the Cemetery Commission. They gave the green light to staff at their last meeting for beginning to design and work on the creation of an additional section at Woodlawn Cemetery. It's proposed for the back wooded area because people who purchase plots like to be away from the road, closer to the woods. So this will be approximately 960 grave sites that will take us for 10 or more years. The cemetery staff are very generously preserving a section of land at the front of the cemetery where people like to take their dogs to walk over to access the trails at Morrison Farm. But in order to ensure that that generosity continues, I'd like to ask people, residents who are walking their dogs, to be really respectful and remember that they are walking through grave sites, and especially if people are there visiting graves, to give a wide berth and also to pick up dog waste, bagged and unbagged. Unfortunately, I saw a large pile at the East Acton Village Green at Saturday's commemoration. The Acton-Boxborough Cultural Council grant cycle is open, and applications for grants are due on October 17th, and you can find the application on the Acton-Boxborough Cultural Council website, which is actonboxboroughculturalcouncil.org. The Water District was awarded another grant, $1.5 million for Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Action Grant, and that offsets the purchase of 549 Main Street. So that's in addition to the $500,000 grant that they received a while ago. And then finally, I just want to let everybody know to save the date, October 15th for the Walk Against Hate. That's going to be at 2 p.m., beginning at the Acton-Boxborough High School and concluding at Gardner Field in West Acton. So that walk is organized by the Kulanu group that's associated with Congregation Beth Elohim. And Kulanu means all of us in Hebrew, and it's an initiative of the Anti-Defamation League to engage synagogues to oppose anti-Semitism and all other forms of bigotry. So I hope to see folks at that event as well.
Thanks, everyone. The next thing on our agenda was a site plan special permit hearing. Before we even consider opening that, the applicant has requested a continuance to September 18th, which is a week from now. I'm thinking that maybe Dean or John has the latest and greatest details on what that means and why it's happening.
So at our meeting month and a half, 2 months ago, we got the initial preview of the plans for the Nagog Mall site. Those plans, there were issues with them that had been recognized by staff and by the applicant before they even came to us. So they requested a continuance so that they could complete the plans. They have done that work, but the plans came back really too late for it to be fully reviewed in time for this meeting by town staff and by our third-party consultant. I know some initial review has been done. I met with planning staff about it. We went over the plans. I think they're quite improved. They've clarified a lot of the issues that we talked about at our first meeting. So I'm hopeful that the process will move fairly quickly at our next meeting. There are still a few points, some waivers that have been requested, but I think it's all issues that can be dealt with from a site plan perspective. I know a lot of folks are also interested not only in the whole idea of a car dealership, but also what's happening with some of the existing businesses. I think John might be able to update us on the latest information he's heard from McGovern. But I think it looks, the plans are much improved.
John, did you have any comments you wanted to make at this point?
Sure, yeah, I did connect with the team just to reach out to let them know that if there were businesses that were needing to be relocated or any business assistance that was needed, that we're here to help. They did mention a few updates. Anytime Fitness has moved out. Beijing Tokyo apparently will be moving out. And the other places in that plaza, the Dollar Tree, the market, and the other places are all going to remain. The restaurant out front that used to be Bickford's and used to be as good as it gets, they're still looking for a restaurant to come in there. That's not related to this site plan at all, I believe, but they're looking to have a restaurant go there. There was I think it was called Huntington Fitness, or a smaller fitness company next to Anytime Fitness. They've actually moved to the building across the parking lot, closer to the water. So they did relocate that business. And I believe those are the ones that are in the proposed area.
Thanks much. Dean, would you like to make this motion?
So I will move that we, Select Board approve a continuance of site plan special permit number 02/27/23-490, MAG RE Holdings, Acton LLC, 1 and 5 Nagog Park and 499 Great Road. We approve the continuance until 7:10 p.m. on Monday, September 18th, 2023.
Second?
Thank you for the second. There might be additional comments from Select Board members? No? Any comments from the public out there? Matt, any hands raised or? One. So, Matt, could you bring us the one commenter? Oh, and now two.
Yes, Mr. Chair. First hand is Carla Haler. I apologize if I said your last name wrong.
Thank you. It's Hyler. 531 Old Stonebrook. I live in Nagog. Just really quickly, one thing in looking at the new plans, one issue that was raised last time was that walkway at the end of Split Rock into the plaza. Not only were they unaware of kind of where Split Rock was. They kept pointing to the front of the property, but I still don't see it in the new plans. That is kind of a vital path for folks from Nagog to get over to the businesses in Nagog Plaza. So I want to make sure that gets addressed. Also, I want to know what kind of coordination does with the Great Road Visioning project that was going on. Because the two hadn't, I brought this up before, but it seemed like the two hadn't talked to each other. And again, looking at the traffic study, it's the same one the Great Road Group pointed to when they were doing their visioning there in the select board room. And they pointed out that they didn't feel that the numbers in January were as heavy as they were at other times of the year. So I'm a little concerned about those traffic numbers being off. And also, if we're trying to do a master plan for Great Road, they should be very much a part of this project. And I want to make sure that they're involved as well.
Carla, I just wanted to...
It's clear that the people who don't want this thing here, it's going to happen whether we want it to or not. So I want to make sure it happens properly.
Carl, I just wanted to check in with you since we're discussing the question of continuing the hearing to a week from now, and whether you had any specific comments about that. I think your other comments are mostly related, would be, belong at the actual hearing, which will be next week, or you can send them in by email if you haven't already.
I'll do that as well, thank you.
Great, thanks, Carla. Okay, and the other person apparently put their hand down. Great. So we've got a motion, it's been seconded. We've had some discussion. All those in favor, please say yes or aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay or no or thumbs down. No, okay, that's unanimous. It's been moved. We'll be back. Okay, next special business. Discuss next steps for sewer commission analysis town meeting article. This was something that was on our agenda last time, and I pulled it because it didn't quite seem ripe yet. Part of that issue was my fault, where in my discussions with the town manager, I hadn't quite noted that making progress on the sewer commission analysis was actually a short-term goal of the select board. So given that, I wanted us to have a discussion about next steps, and Alyssa has agreed to get us started on that. So Alyssa, you have some questions or thoughts to help the discussion start?
Thank you. So this is a short-term goal for the select board. It's a result of the citizen petition that I presented before election, not before election, at town meeting as a citizen to consider exploring the creation to do a sewer commission analysis, the creation of an independent sewer commission or other avenue. So I think that just to start off the discussion about how we proceed, figuring out what form that analysis will take, whether we establish a working group or a subcommittee or hire a consultant to conduct the analysis, is just to look at some of the challenges that the town faces or the sewer commissioners face. One of those is limited capacity at the existing plant. Another one is financing of expansion, the inequity of the current financial model that we have here in Acton, whereby only residents that are, or parcels that are served by the sewer are bettered, rather than having the entire town pick up that cost. And then the cost and land issues, finding an appropriate site for such expansion. So I think those are the biggest challenges facing us. And some of the other challenges that I mentioned in the process of bringing this to town meeting was the transparency that's limited because as select board members, we have a lot on our plate, so a lot of time is not devoted to sewer business, and there are some conflicts of interest where the select board has the concerns of the entire town to uphold, whereas a sewer commission would be upholding the needs of the ratepayers. And sometimes those can be in conflict.
Thank you. To add a little bit of extra context to the discussion, I also wanted to hear from John about topics like if we were to do this via, hiring a consultant, is there information or ideas you have about the process that would lead up to hiring a consultant, or or anything about the approximate size or cost of having a consultant for this kind of study? If you had any thoughts or information about either of those topics.
Well, to conduct a study to explore whether to create a different way to manage the sewer operation or to serve as sewer commissioners, I think would be an amount that would be between 10 and 20,000. To create a study that answers some of the questions that were just raised would be a different amount.
Great, thanks. And if we were to, if this board decided that we wanted to move towards hiring a consultant with this, what are the sort of things that the board or staff would need to do before that?
So for any contract that we create with a consultant, we need to have a scope of services. And so a scope of services is a really way to guide the work product, because a consultant will do anything, really, but so you need to tell them specifically what type of work you want them to do and what questions you want answered. So if it's related to the makeup of how sewer is overseen, it could be researching what other towns do. It could be other things like that. And so the scope would lay that out exactly what the board wants this consultant to report on, and then they would report on it to you, I would assume, and then next steps could be taken from there.
Thank you so much. So with that as background, I'd love to hear from board members about thoughts related to, whether this feels like a consultant-sized piece of work to study this, or whether it can be done entirely by volunteers. And in any case, what should be included in preliminary thoughts about the scope of services that, either a consultant might take on or a working group? Dean.
Well, I think I believe in a week or two, we're going to be having a fairly extensive workshop on sewer issues. And I think that might be the better time. After we've heard the presentation, we could flesh this out a little bit. Certainly, I've got no objection to studying this issue. I'm certainly aware that, when a sewer commissioner issue comes to us, most of us don't have a great depth of knowledge. It is really specialized field that you really have to get involved in, and not only from an engineering point of view, but obviously a financial and legal point of view. I think if the town manager would like some early information, I know he's going to be starting assembling his thoughts for his budget process. I wouldn't have any problem with voting in favor of a motion to ask him to include a reasonable sum of money in his budget request for next year to hire a consultant to do this. My suspicion is that we don't have sufficient staff and expertise in-house. And frankly, we're with something like 50 committees going already, I'm not sure that we need to, or if the town has the capacity to add another committee just to study this. So I really think we should go the consultant route. But I think I'd really like to hear what is being talked about at that workshop in a couple of weeks before we go much further as far as scoping this. But certainly, my own point of view, I'd be happy to see a sum of money be included in the budget preparation for next year, so you can really do an in-depth study of this.
Thanks, Dean. Other thoughts? David?
Thank you. I have some mixed feelings or concerns about this. It seems to me that most of the issues that we deal with as sewer commissioners, I think if you went and count them, they relate to money and policy. I think those two subjects are subjects that we best handle. I would not want to push the money issues off on someone else, and the policy issues often relate to the town. I do agree, Alyssa's brought up before, that, issues like whether we should waive privilege fees for affordable housing when those monies come out of the sewer enterprise budget and not the entire town. That's an important question for us to ask, but I think that's an excellent example of something that us as sewer commissioners best answer, right? So that's kind of one side of the fence. I do agree that maybe we sometimes need help with the technical end. So I happen to be, my degree's in civil engineering. I've taken courses in water and wastewater. So it's not so much of a firsthand problem for me, but there are still a number of issues to consider. I don't know how to, to me, to solve that problem that problem is not solved by separating the sewer commissioners, right? I think that we may need, we or whoever the sewer commissioners are, may need more technical advice. Unless we found 5 civil engineers in town to be sewer commissioners, then they would be good for the technical issues. But I'm not sure they should be the ones making the policy and the money questions, or answering the policy and money questions. So, I think we need to ask ourselves, why would we do this and what does it solve, right? Because I think by separating the sewer commissioners doesn't solve the technical issue. And I recognize the technical issues. I don't know whether we need, more involvement with the contractor we have, whether we need separate contractors for second opinions on things when technical issues come up. What kind of solutions would work to solve the technical issues? But I can't see that being solved by separating the sewer commissioners from us. And I see, like I said, distinct disadvantages. We cannot, this board cannot separate itself from the money issues anyway. And there are decisions that we've made in the past that are a matter of policy, like slowing rate increases, things like that we've done really for policy issues, not so much, if you did it purely financially, we would have raised the rates higher and more quickly. So I think those are important for us to deal with, myself. So, and I would have a hard time framing a task for a consultant to tell us whether to separate the sewer commissioners, right? I think we should discuss possible ways, what the problems we have are and how we might solve them. And then maybe we do that at our meeting in a few weeks. And then depending on the outcome of that, and if we feel we need a consultant to answer some questions for us, we do that. But to me, I don't want to dive into asking the consultant whether or not to separate the sewer commissioners from us.
Fran, thoughts?
I'd like to wait in a couple of weeks. I agree with Dean and David, so I'm still on the fence. I could see a consultant, instructing us how we separate the two, if that's not feasible. I mean, I'd like to wait until we meet as sewer commissioners.
Thanks, Fran. Alyssa, you sort of framed some questions, but we didn't really get a chance to hear from you about your opinions about, how to approach these questions.
So I think that in order for this to be an independent, unbiased analysis, that it needs to come from an outside consultant rather than this board or a subcommittee or even a working group with staff. And I don't agree that the answer is not separating the sewer commission work from the select board in order to tackle some of these problems, because this board has a lot more turnover than I imagine a sewer commission would, made up of folks who, as Dean said, have the more technical, it's great that we have one board member who has civil engineering background, but that's highly unusual for a board. There might be somebody with financial background, there might be somebody else with legal background. That's happened definitely with other iterations of the select board. But having folks who are meeting more regularly, I mean, the water district is a good example. They're meeting every couple of weeks, and there's not a lot of turnover on that board of elected officials. And I'm not saying that a sewer commission would need to be elected. There are plenty of separate sewer commissions in other towns that are appointed. They're statutory, they operate with a separate sewer enterprise fund, just like we do, that's separate from the general fund, and are still under the authority of the select board. But that institutional knowledge, I think, that would build up over time is really, really valuable, as well as the access to the public that would result from meeting more regularly. And we could solve some of these issues concurrently with the analysis. Like, we could have a meeting that was distinct, just sewer commission meeting rather than sewer commission business within a select board meeting. We could have a sewer commissioners page on the website where all of this information is found. I know there's a lot of information already on the website, but just framed as the sewer commissioners page. So some of that transparency can be improved. And some sewer commissions do that. It's the same people. I think it's in Shirley, same people, but they have a separate meeting where it's just sewer business.
Thanks. So to summarize some of what I heard and to share my own thoughts, I agree we're going to be able to have a more in-depth discussion after we have this sewer summit. But this was a good place for us to get started. I think it does probably make sense to consider having some money in the budget for next year to do this study. I also think that there's a possibility that if our discussions proceed in a way that says that we want to hire a consultant, it's quite possible that something along the scale of 10 to 20K can be found. And we've often been able to locate sums of that size when they're needed. So I'm not convinced we need to wait till next year to spend the money, but I'm quite willing if that's what happens. The other thing I've heard is that when we started reading about the variety of ways sewer commissions are set up, What I hear based on, especially what David's comments are, is that we would be Acton would tend to be on the side of having sewer commissioners be an advisory committee to the board, because we are responsible for the larger, financial and, / legal / political aspects of this, but it would still potentially be very helpful to develop, some body of expertise and some, ability for the public to comment on just the sewer issues. We may be able to accomplish that by having more frequent, sewer-only meetings. So I think that's a question we're going to have to settle as we get into the details here, is whether what we need is a separate sewer commission or whether what we need is more sewer-only meetings. I think that's all I would have to say. And I just appreciate everybody making their initial thoughts about how we proceed with this, so we have some, foundation for getting into the next level of detail on the conversation. Any thoughts from the public or from the last comments from the select board on this one? No? Okay. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate us being able to launch into this. Okay, turning my agenda back to the first page. October 9th is coming up, and we have wrestled with the question of Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day. For last year, we wrestled with this, and the previous year. So this is a slow and important question, but I do have some thoughts that I discussed with Alyssa and the town manager about how to handle this year, and there's some updates about what might happen in the future. So again, I think I would turn to Alyssa for a bit of an update.
Sure. So I mentioned at our August 21st meeting that I had drafted a proclamation, hoping that we could not only declare this year Indigenous Peoples Day on October, is it 9th? 10th? 9th, but have a proclamation to go with that. The feedback that I received was that we need to put that on hold because a proclamation really needs to have an event, some action that goes with it. So I think that we can do what we did, what you did last year and the year before, is just declare this particular year's date as Indigenous Peoples Day as a board, and work towards, over the coming year, making an official permanent change with a proclamation, as the school district has already done, I think, 3 or 4 years ago now.
Thanks. So there's some comments and questions. David?
Thank you. Can you explain what the event is and why can't this October 9th be the event?
So we don't have anything planned right now, but another example of a proclamation of India Independence Day went with the flag raising ceremony where it was read publicly. So that has a lot more meaning for Indigenous peoples than just for us to have something that was available, on the website. Does that answer your question?
Yes, now I understand what you mean by event. I'm still a little confused why we have to have an activity in order to change the day from here on. I don't understand why we have put off for 2 years because of various reasons, not changing the day from here on. And, each year we've said just what you said now, that we can work over the next year to make it happen. And I don't understand why it can't happen right now.
Can I answer that? And then you'll get 3 answers, maybe. So I didn't mean that we couldn't make a permanent change to Indigenous Peoples' Day. But I think what we heard last year was that folks want some more discussion, public input and education around this. And that was planned for last year with the event at the library. That didn't happen. We have definitely had some educational, informational events. Dan Bodillion gave a talk on his new book at the library in the spring. There was the event on Saturday, and we can continue with that. But I'd like to respect that input from the public that, we build up to a permanent. I'm all ready to vote for that, but I just want to make sure that we're going about the process in the right way, because the process is so important.
Yeah, I just wanted to also mention a couple of factors. One was, as you said, the interest in having a bigger, a more public back and forth discussion about this, because we sort of started in on it, and that we haven't really figured out how to organize that. I think part of that was the transition from, Himaja being the sort of the moving force behind this, and then, Himaja's not here, so, Alyssa's been picking this up, and it's there's a transition time. The other thing is in our conversations, with local Indigenous people, which I think is a key part of this process. We've in speaking, for example, with the Neshoba Praying Indians, who are now, much more public than they were a couple of years ago, we've learned that about their process, which is very deliberate, very careful, and may not have the like snap decisions that we sometimes are driven to on the board, but they're fine with taking the time. So I'm following their lead.
Yeah, I agree with Alyssa and with you, Jim. I think there does need to be some more outreach. There needs to be some consideration. I'm thinking back to the draft proclamation that Himaja brought forward, which was really lengthy and frankly overblown. I think, I'd like to see a draft of a somewhat shortened proclamation, kind of see what people are thinking about. And I do think that it'd be important to get input. I suspect that the decision would be the same, but I think the process is important. There's been a lot of discussion among some elements of the community being really upset about the very truncated process that the school district took with the colonial mascot. And I don't think this would be quite as emotional as that, but I think it's important that people be given a chance to talk about it. I think the first official Columbus Day was over 100 years ago. So I think, if we wait one more year and we actually get it right and get a proclamation that people are happy with and people understand why the change needs to take place. And I think more than anything, it's important to make sure that we celebrate the Indigenous people, but not disparage other ethnic groups while you're doing it. And I think that people were really frankly offended by some of the first attempts at doing this. So I agree with the idea of take a little bit more time and really focus. Have another event at the library, get all sides in there, explain the background. I think people will be much more sympathetic now they've had a chance to get used to the idea.
Fran.
Sorry, Alyssa, I have a question for you too, but I'm in the camp of moving forward with this. I think that we've delayed it already. I see no problem with declaring this October 9th Indigenous Peoples' Day. I feel like an event, we can prepare events in the future. I think that would be so much fun. And I would even help Alyssa if you wanted to do some sort of outreach before our next meeting, if that's even possible, and so we can approve this before October 9th. That's.
So I think that we can approve it today for this year, just like happened in the last couple of years. And I just want to take the opportunity now to let everyone know that there are some opportunities for learning. So every October is Archaeology Month, and the Friends of Pine Hawk, for probably as long as they've existed. I know I've been going to their events for 10 or 15 years. They put on a fabulous program, series for the month of October. And this year, it includes another book discussion on Dan's book, History of the Neshoba Prairie Indians. And that's Monday, October 16th, which is when we're meeting. But for folks who don't need to come to the Select Board meeting at 7 p.m. at the Acton Memorial Library. So October 16th, there is, you need to register for Friends of Pine Hawk events, but you can find their website easily by a search and do that. And I'm sure if you show up, they probably won't ask you to leave. You can also sign up to receive the Friends of Pine Hawk newsletter, which has, throughout the year, walks and discussions and talks. And another thing that folks can do, because I am a big proponent of this board making sure that outreach and education happens, but I'm also a big proponent of people taking responsibility for their own education. So I would invite people to take the step if they're not ready to be supportive of this, to learn some more. One way that you can do that, besides learning about the Indigenous peoples who have been here for 10,000 years, you can learn about the people who are working hard today on the Indigenous legislative agenda. There are 5 bills that are being advanced by Indigenous peoples at the State House. So do a search for that and find out what their issues are, what they're caring about. It's about education, it's about the state seal, and a lot of other issues.
So I thank you, Alyssa, for picking up the mantle on this. I'm just frankly disappointed. It seems to me in the last 2 years, we have invited and gotten significant feedback on this. I mean, I think last year probably 15 people or more spoke. And probably, it's fading in my memory now, but a significant number the year before that as well. And so, I think we've done, our due diligence in getting feedback from folks. And I want to say too that the feedback that we got last year was mixed. I mean, some people were emphasizing Italian heritage and things like that. And I don't think anybody's trying to disparage anyone of Italian descent. And other people were very much in favor of Indigenous Peoples Day. And I'm just frankly disappointed that we can't move forward on a permanent basis. But I very much appreciate also Alyssa addressing the issues like an outreach program and an event and things. Thank you.
We may be about ready to move to a motion. I wonder if there's any informative public comment on this? Are there any hands up? Yeah, okay. There's at least one comment out there, Matt, if you can invite them in.
Of course, Mr. Chair. This is from our call-in user from earlier. They should be able to speak now.
Hi, it's Chair Matt.
Hello? Yes, yeah, we can pretty much hear you. There was a little bit of cutting in and out, but we could make out what you were saying.
I'll talk closer to the phone. How is this? Is this better?
Better.
Thank you. So I'm going to actually take it off. This might be better. So I'm very much in favor of declaring future forward that it's Indigenous Day. Doesn't need to have a big whereas and a whole lot of things. People have been waiting for thousands of years for this. And I believe that any one of you all can make that motion, that we just declare the date to be Indigenous People Day. And then each year people can have an event, have fun, do whatever they're going to do, speak at an event. But that at the very least, that that you all as leaders believe that such a moment pass. So thank you so much.
Thank you much. Oh, look, there's hands up. Fran?
So I want to make a motion to declare this coming October 9th Indigenous People Day.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Great. Any more discussion on that? Dean?
I guess if it's that simple a motion, so be it. I think if at some point we come up with if the decision was going to be to do a proclamation, I would hope that we'd have a chance to review it and maybe vote it at our next meeting. So I just don't know what Fran's intent is. I don't think I've seen the most recent draft of an actual proclamation.
Fran, since this was your motion, do you have thoughts about that?
I seem to remember a proclamation, can come later, if I'm not mistaken. My intent is to vote on this tonight to be prepared for October 9th.
Other thoughts about that? Alyssa?
Yes, I think that's what I'm hearing from Fran's motion, that this year, so October 9th, 2023, Indigenous Peoples' Day. There's been, for a few decades now, an effort from Indigenous tribes in Massachusetts to have Massachusetts declare a replacement of Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples' Day. And on their website, it states very clearly that if you're looking to do this in your community, in your city or your town, you need to reach out to Indigenous people, because if you're going to do it on your own without being in collaboration, then you're kind of missing the point. So that's the effort here. And I shared the proclamation, which Dean will be happy was much shorter. It was only 1 page instead of 4, with Wanjiko, with Dan Bodillion, who passed it on to Strong Bear Medicine, and his sister Quiet Storm. And so based on the feedback from all of those people, what we're doing is putting the proclamation on hold until next year and working to, reconcile the relationship, build community support, do outreach and education, until next year, when hopefully we can make a motion as a board and approve to make a permanent change.
David?
Just a point of clarification, are you saying that we should, in your view, not have a proclamation this year?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, well, we've got a motion, we've got a second, we have some clarification about what that motion means. Any final comments before we take a vote? Alyssa?
Thank you. I just wanted to take the opportunity to respond to something that Dean brought up at our last meeting about creating a policy around sending letters of condolences, because we did approve a letter of condolences to Strong Bear Medicine for the passing of Chief Caring Hands. And I don't think that that's necessary, so I just wanted to take the opportunity today to state that as a board. I think that we can trust ourselves as well as future board members to make good decisions without having a policy. Dean, you mentioned the flag raising policy, which I believe I wrote to the board at the time, being in disagreement with that. We didn't send a letter of condolences to Strong Bear Medicine and his family because their land was stolen. We sent it because we're trying to cultivate a good working relationship with the group in order to do these things that we're discussing today. So it's not necessarily, there's no danger of a slippery slope where we might go down a path to unnecessarily or carelessly make these decisions.
Oh, well, absolutely, and then I also
then-
want to leave room for Dean, whose name was
Dean
just
wants
mentioned,
to-
in case he wants to say something.
So Yeah, I mean, I certainly appreciate your comments there. I just generally think that it's better that we have some rules of the road established, so there's some consistency amongst not only this board, but future boards as to, how we're going to conduct our business. But that's for a longer discussion. As far as the flag raising policy, actually, I wrote it, and you actually objected to it. But I'll leave it at that. The board did establish that. It's a standing policy, and I think it does give us some good guidance, and I think it also puts us in a good situation as far as any First Amendment challenges for other groups that might wish to take advantage of flag-raising opportunities.
Thanks, Dean. Fran?
I just wanted to quickly commend you, Alyssa, because I know that Himaja had a hard time getting groups together, and you seem to have made progress, so thank you.
Okay, we've got a motion and we've got a second, and we've had some additional discussion and clarification. So I would go ahead and invite people to say yes or aye if they approve the motion of declaring, October 19th, 2023 as Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Great, that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, the next item is an update on the Acton Leadership Group process, also known as the ALG. So let me bring up my notes. This was my first year attending the ALG meetings and as an actual member of the group. And we just had our first meeting, so things have just gotten started. So there's not a lot of updates yet, but I will say a couple of things. First of all, there's a new format of spreadsheet that's being used that I found at least much more understandable, and we will strive to make that available, as time goes by. It's we have to figure out exactly where to put it and and where it belongs and all that. But it will show up, and we'll make sure people know. But just for those of you, not so much the board members, I think who have a pretty good grasp of the process, but maybe for those who are watching. So the Acton Leadership Group is made up of 2 members each from the Acton Select Board, the Finance Committee, and the AB Regional School Committee, and staff, the town manager and the school superintendent and designated staff on those sides. And the idea is to figure out ahead of time, before, way before town meeting, what the overall shape of the budget will be. How money is, what's the split going to be between the percentage of money that goes to the schools and the percentage that goes to the town operations, and how much the tax rate will go up, and then there's all the ancillary related topics about, how do we need to feed the various enterprise funds some money, and all that. So there's a whole bunch of preliminary work that goes on. When the ALG, the agreement that we've made as attendees at the ALG is that if the ALG comes to an agreement, a consensus agreement on how to proceed, that those members will then do their best to come back to our respective boards and say, hey, this is what the ALG group is thinking. You're okay with this, right? And if the boards are not okay with this, then go back to the ALG and say, we really thought the board was going to go for this, but they didn't. To avoid undue surprises later on in the process, we will be coming back to the select board sometimes to say, here's where we think we're headed. We need your opinion. So you can expect some discussions in the future about, policy questions, general policy questions, and then specific, number kinds of questions. So we will be coming back with more details. But I wanted to say at least that we've launched the process this year. it was in this very room with a little bit of remote attendance, and it was, a good feeling. Like, we know we have a lot to do, but people were respectful, and we have really good outside facilitation to help us get along when things get trickier. Any other questions or thoughts from those who were also at that meeting? Okay, great. Well, that's the update. Next update, item 7, update on health insurance trust. Alyssa's our rep to the health insurance trust. What can you tell us, Alyssa?
So I just wanted to bring to the board, because this is part of my assignment as a trustee, to update my board on board actions. Board of Trustees actions. There was not any action taken at the last meeting, but I thought that the news was significant enough to share with you. So the trust just hired a new consultant, so we're now working with Gallagher. And there was a presentation by Anthony Lively from Gallagher to the trust about last fiscal year, and we have a loss of about 2.3 million, and that was a lot higher than was expected. The numbers are not firm because there was a data breach earlier in the year of Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, so estimates, but it's still not very good news. The good news is that Anthony also shared with the trustees a lot of different cost mitigation strategies to consider. So there wasn't a decision made, but we heard about all of these. They range from Medicare migration, which is figuring out which employees or retirees are eligible and moving them to Medicare, pharmacy benefit management, maybe international drug purchasing, perhaps cost share adjustment or plan design changes, which would involve collective bargaining if those changes were pursued. But it was great to have an estimate of what savings each one of those strategies could bring, and the trustees asked him to have the underwriter look at those to make sure, they're more solid numbers, so we can decide, which percentage cost savings for each one will add up to the cost savings that we need.
There might be questions. Yes, David.
Just a really simple question. I think that 2.3 million was the end loss at the end of fiscal 23?
Yes.
Thank you.
And for those who are wondering why we have long discussions about health insurance costs rather than just going to the health insurance companies and asking them what the insurance was cost, Acton and the schools actually self-fund their health insurance. So the health insurance companies are brought in as managers, but they are, we're the ones with the pool of money that's paying the claim. So we need to manage, if that pool shrinks too much, we don't end up with the money to pay the claim. So we've been, that's why we have a health insurance trust, to manage that process.
Can I just add one thing? I just wanted to let the public know that, and also the board members, in case you didn't know, the memo that was included in the packet was a summary of the health, of the healthcare trust, that was written by Steve Noon, who's on the Acton Finance Committee, and he's also the chairman of the Health Insurance Trust. So I don't think that his name or date or anything was on there, but that was circulated prior to the meeting to the trustees.
Thanks. So for those of you who want to dig in more, check out our packet. Last item before we get to consent is assigning a new liaison to the Minuteman Advisory Group Interlocal Coordinating Group, which is also known as MAGIC, which is the best acronym in the world. But it turns out that our liaison, who's currently Alyssa, now has a schedule conflict. So it could be that somebody else here would be willing to be the liaison to Magic. Alyssa, can you remind us when those meetings are?
I think they are the fourth Tuesday of the month at 9 o'clock in the morning. Let me just confirm that.
And they are entirely by remote meetings? David has some info on this.
I don't know where they are now, but they were in person before the pandemic.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's true. It's not the huge MAPC. It is our local town, so it's not too difficult to go to a in-person meeting.
The first Tuesday of the month, and it's at 9 to 10:30.
Okay, so it could be that someone here is ready to be the liaison right now, or it could be that we'll let it sit and percolate for a little while, or we'll have an awkward silence. But look, David's raising his hand.
I'd be willing to be liaison. I think I have 2 to 3 fewer liaison assignments than the rest of the board. And I used to attend all these meetings. But I haven't, in a couple of years.
Would anybody like to arm wrestle or choose straws with David about this assignment, or? No, I see people stepping back from their microphones.
Thank you, David.
Yes, thank you. It seems like our tradition over the last 2 or 3 years is to affirm liaison assignments, not with a formal vote, but with a sort of informal showing of thumbs for some reason. So are we okay with this notion? Yes, I'm seeing thumbs all around. So David, you are now the liaison, and we'll make sure that gets reflected in the magical liaison chart that Lisa maintains, although she's not here.
It's a manual liaison chart.
Okay.
Lisa just makes it seem like magic.
Okay, good, even better. Okay, that's all the agenda items we have other than the consent items. So, and then, of course, the meeting eval. So let me read through these consent items and see how we do. Approve meeting minutes, August 21st, 2023. And on any of these, I'll wait to hear from anybody that they'd like to discuss these more. Appoint Bettina Abe as a full member of the Land Stewardship Committee with a term to end on June 30th, 2026. Appoint Maria Paunescu as a full member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission with a term to end on June 30th, 2026. Approve one-day alcoholic beverage licenses. Neshoba Valley Neighbors Club, Nagog Woods Clubhouse, October 28th, 2023. Lauren Pollack, Congregation Beth Elohim, 133 Prospect Street, October 22nd, 2023. Ironworks Farm, 128 Main Street, October 7th, 2023. And the West Acton Village Merchants Association, Gardner Field, 530 Mass Ave, September 30th, 2023. Rain date, October 7th, 2023. Item 13, fee waiver request of $25 from Ironworks Farm for a one-day alcoholic beverage license.
Hold.
Yep, thank you.
Actually, I'd like to hold the last one, just the West Acton Village.
Great, okay, so we're also holding the West Acton Village Merchants Association. And so we have part of 12 and 13. And 14, accept donation from Acton Lions Club for $250 towards the Commission on Disabilities to support their summer activities. Okay, no concerns about that one. So let's start with approving the ones that are ready to be approved without additional discussion. So is there be a motion about approving consent items 9 through 11 and 14?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving those agenda items as is, please say aye or yes.
Aye.
I'm seeing yeses all around. That's unanimous. Okay, now let's get back to the details here. Of the one-day alcoholic beverage licenses, the one that we wanted to discuss more was West Acton Village Merchants Association. David, why don't you take us through what your thought or your concern is?
Yes, I am wondering if that applies to multiple merchants, and if so, I think they need to be listed. And they could be listed for our next meeting. But I don't think the West Acton Village Merchants Association itself will be serving alcohol. If I'm wrong, that's fine. If multiple of the West Acton merchants, maybe one of the pizza places and True West, they should be listed. So that's what I would ask for. And I don't mind approving the other three tonight.
Hi, Alyssa, why don't you go ahead? You had a thought.
So I just want to add a thought that the police chief had recommended to police details, but I didn't see any confirmation that that was something that the Merchants Association was agreeing to and would be able to provide for. So that's just one more question if we're moving it to next week.
John, you might have some info about this.
So to the question of who pulls the license, True West, for example, already has a liquor license, so they can't get a one-day. So I think in the past, this event has been handled in a way that the event organizer was the license holder of the one-day. But we certainly can double-check that, and I think the timing would work for us to do that before the next meeting, if that's what the board wants to do. And then to the question of the police detail, I agree with the police chief that event in a vibrant, very busy, and awesome new renovated playground will attract even more people than it had in the past. And relying on patrol officers that are scheduled that day to check in on the park is not going to be sufficient, even if they don't have a call on the other side of town. So I really do think that the board could approve it contingent on a detail being in place, if you didn't want to wait till next week.
So we have two different concerns that we could possibly wait until the 18th to resolve. One is about, how many places or people are involved in serving liquor. Is there is a TIP certified server here, and does that mean that person is doing all the serving? And then the other question was about, just adding a police detail requirement. David.
So I appreciate the manager's comment that an establishment with a liquor license can't get a one-day liquor license. But I still would like, even if we only get one, that I would like the vendors listed. And I know it's not just one person serving the alcohol, because I've gone there myself and had a beer. So, and I don't mind that. I mean, I think it's fine that we have this. I would just like to know the list of the vendors that are serving alcohol as part of this one-day license. And then it sounds like we also want to know whether a detail is being provided.
Okay, great. Did I see a hand raised flashing by on the screen there? Okay.
Yeah.
Matt, why don't we hear from a member of the public on this?
This is the call-in user. They should be able to speak now.
Hi, this is Tara again. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So is it proposed that the police detail be added to a liquor license, because the item is about a liquor license?
I think that's what I understood, both from David and from the town manager, is that we conditioned the granting of the liquor license on the presence of a police detail of two people.
Thank you. And I believe that in the past that the police were detailed there, but they did it as a contribution to the town. And so on behalf of the West Acton Village Merchants Association, if you condition this based on a police detail, I would ask you to also, find the money for the detail from the town, as opposed to having this be a new requirement so close to the event where the money that is actually given pantry, you basically would be taking the money out of the donations to charitable organizations. So wondering how you handle that, especially where this was on consent, and I don't think that the West Acton Merchants Association was notified that that might be a concern. It might be pulled off, and it might be conditioned, quite differently than anything in the past. Just an idea.
Great.
Thanks.
So the notion I'm hearing is to wait until the 18th, which gives the applicant time to understand and respond, and gives the town staff time to understand and respond as well, so that we can have a discussion about this in a week. David.
Based on the caller's comments, maybe we could ask the town manager to let us know next week what has happened in the past and what the police are intending to do for the Oktoberfest day. Thank you.
Is that a reasonable request? Great. I see a nod from John, so let's consider that a request from the board. So it seems like what we're doing is we are approving the first 3 one-day alcoholic beverage licenses that are listed here, the Neshoba Valley Neighbors Club, the Congregation Beth Elohim, and Ironworks Farm, and we're just waiting until the 18th to reconsider the West Acton Village Merchants Association. Somebody like to make that motion or have a comment about that? David?
Yeah, I would like to move that we approve the 3 one-day liquor licenses that you read from the Neshoba Valley Neighbors Club, Lauren Pollock, and Ironwork Farm.
Second?
Second.
Great. Any other discussion on that? No? All those in favor, please say aye or yes.
Aye.
Great, that's unanimous. Thank you. We'll come back to this, how we support this wonderful event that's coming up on September 30th. The next item that I had held off the agenda was the fee waiver request of $25 from Ironworks Farm for a one-day alcoholic beverage license. I'm in favor of granting this request. I just wanted to pull this off briefly so that this kind of request has been on the consent agenda, every year for a number of years. So it's just been a while since the board has had a chance to kind of understand what's going on here. That there is an ability for, nonprofits to request a fee waiver for their one-day liquor license fees. And not all nonprofits do this. What I don't know is whether all nonprofits know that they can do this. So I guess I want to take a moment to say out loud for all you nonprofits out there considering one-day liquor licenses, you could ask us for a waiver. But there might be other board members who have either thoughts about this topic or information about this topic. Alyssa.
So I held this item because I'm a member of the Ironwork Farm, so I'll recuse myself since this is a financial matter.
Oh, okay, that's right. You pulled it off. I was going to pull it off if you hadn't, and that was the reason I was going to pull it off, but that's very helpful to know. Thank you. Are there other thoughts, questions, concerns about the notion of nonprofits being able to ask for a fee waiver request for their one-day liquor licenses? David.
Sorry, can I ask if you are a board member? So I'm just a regular member as well, and maybe more of us are. So I think you don't need to recuse yourself unless you're a voting member. Right, so I think that in other things that come up, I know there's a difference, for example, for the people in our district that are legislators, if they're voting members of the food co-op, they can't deal with legislation that deals with that, but if they're not voting members of the food co-op, they can. So
I was just playing it safe, but I am not a voting member.
Okay.
So.
I would say that she doesn't need to recuse, and if we think that she does, then I need to as well.
Any other thoughts about the recusal process for non-voting members of boards? No, I'm inclined to agree that, it's great that you've offered to recuse yourself out of an abundance of caution, but I would encourage you to go ahead and feel fine about voting. Okay.
Just make a
Please.
little- So I'm all for approving this. Ironwork Farm is near and dear to my heart, so I think that it's appropriate that they just request a waiver. I think it's something that if we can offer, that's great for them. And they really support Patriots Day and all other events in town, historic events, so.
Okay, Alyssa?
I will just add that you should all go to the open tap room on October 7th because it is a lot of fun and the drinks and food are great.
And I will be checking people in.
Okay. Yeah, in fact, the one-day liquor license agenda, consent items are a really good calendar of upcoming free drinking events, so just keep that in mind. Oh, it's not free? Oh, of course, I think it's a fundraiser. Okay, we should indicate that on all of these things about whether the alcohol is free or not. Okay, so is there a motion to accept this fee waiver request?
I'll move to approve item 13, to fee waiver request from Ironwork Farm for their one-day liquor license.
And I'm looking for a second.
Second?
Okay. I think we've had plenty of discussion on this important topic, and let's go ahead and indicate our support by saying yes or aye.
Aye.
Or denial by saying no or nay, or are there abstentions? No, okay, that's unanimous. Okay, that's the regular part of the meeting. We do have a meeting eval. Let's see, if I have any comments about this. No, I thought it went pretty well. I was worried that I was going to be distracted just because of the storm seems to have set me and everybody else a little bit on edge, a little bit, like tentative or confused, but I think I managed to get it together, and as did everybody. I appreciate that. There was a funny thing about the rhythm of the meeting where there were so many things that were, I said something and then I turned to Alyssa to say something. So I just want to say that's not a regular feature of the meeting. We do try to, distribute things among, all the concerns of all the board members. So please don't hesitate to bring agenda items forward. Everybody gets a voice at the table. And it's good to be here. It's good to, we're ending at probably a reasonable time. It felt like it went by pretty well. It's not 8 o'clock, because that's what that clock says. What does the right clock say? 8:35, okay.
Which is still reasonable.
Yeah, it's all good. So any other comments about things that went well about the meeting that we'd like to repeat, or things that felt, a little bit awkward that we'd like to learn from, or follow-up items that, came up during discussion that we want to make sure to say out loud so we don't forget that, there's some action to be taken.
I thought the meeting went well. I just wanted to recognize Dean's comment. About the Indigenous Peoples' Day, I didn't think I was being impulsive because we had discussed it for a couple of years. So I thought that it was pretty appropriate to vote for that at this meeting. So I not that impulsive.
Thanks. Any other comments to make it a complete meeting for people?
So I guess we should put the sewer commission analysis on an October meeting agenda following our sewer workshop.
Thanks for the reminder on that. Any other meeting eval comments? John?
I don't participate in the evaluation, I understand that.
Okay.
I just have a grammar question.
Great.
Are we putting in an apostrophe after peoples, in Indigenous Peoples' Day?
Alyssa's been the one most closely studying this.
Yes, the apostrophe comes after the S.
Ooh, oh, that's right, okay. It's peoples and it's possessive of peoples, and you don't say S apostrophe S, because that would just be too complicated.
Likewise, after Patriots Day, after the S, same thing. That really bugs me.
Okay, well, that's good to have a grammar lesson right at the end. There would be one more motion we usually have at the end of a meeting.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
That's not debatable. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're done. Thanks, everybody.